My fiancée, the CEO, told me the company wasn't doing well and cut my salary in half. But moments later, I saw her junior assistant bragging on Facebook. My boss not only gave me a raise, but also bought me a luxury car, so I wouldn't get tired commuting. So thoughtful. In the photo, he and my fiancée, Sarah, stood in front of a brand new, six-figure luxury car, looking blissfully happy together. I thought about it for 2 seconds, then liked the post. That evening, Sarah called an emergency meeting and, using the excuse that I was disrupting company morale, docked my entire month's salary to give to the junior assistant as compensation for emotional damages. My colleagues looked at me with pity, expecting me to fly into a rage. But I just calmly packed up my desk and placed my letter of resignation in front of her. Docking my pay isn't enough for bullying a colleague, is it? I'll do you one better and resign. Before the words had even settled, the junior assistant, Leo Hayes, chimed in. Daniel, how can you quit over something so small? He said. You've been with the company for so long, and Sarah is always so good to you. If you leave at a time like this, what will people think of her? Sarah, you should try to talk some sense into him. Sarah might have been about to reason with me, but after hearing Leo's speech, her temper flared. Reason with him? If he wants to leave, let him. My conscience is clear. I don't care what anyone says. She snatched my resignation, signed it, and threw it in my face. The onlookers stared, waiting for the drama to unfold. But I didn't argue as I would have in the past. I calmly picked up the paper from the floor. I'll leave as soon as I've transitioned my projects. No transition necessary. If you're going to get out now. Sarah pointed to the door, then, as if a thought occurred to her, added coldly, You quit, so there's no severance. At this, a few colleagues I was close with urged me to just apologize and not be rash. They all knew I had built this company from nothing, right alongside Sarah. When the company was short on cash, I was the one who endured endless nights of schmoozing investors to secure funding. When we were behind on a deadline, I led the team through 3 days straight of sleepless nights to get it done. I had poured my heart and soul into this business. Leaving now meant abandoning everything. But my mind was made up. I thanked them, gathered my belongings, and walked out. Before I left, I saw a flicker of something complex in Sarah's eyes. I knew she didn't believe I would actually go through with it. We had fought over Leo many times before. In the worst fight, Sarah had publicly humiliated me and given my entire annual bonus to him instead. I was so furious, I threatened to quit. But when it came time to leave, I always backed down. I would go back to her, swallow my pride, and act as if nothing had happened, burying myself in my work. She assumed I would do the same this time, that I would rationalize it all away. But she didn't know that my patience had finally been exhausted. Just as I stepped out of the building, a notification popped up on my phone. I opened it to see a large wire transfer from my friend, Mark. That morning, when Sarah had told me the company was struggling and that she had to cut my pay, my first instinct was to worry about the pressure she was under. I had immediately called Mark to arrange a $50,000 loan. I had planned to give it to her, but that's when I saw Leo's Facebook post. Suddenly, Sarah's real motive became clear. Yet, I felt a surprising sense of calm. There was no sadness, no jealous rage. Perhaps it was because this had happened too many times. Sarah had done so many outrageous things for Leo's sake that I was beginning to lose track of who her boyfriend was, me or him. I sent the money back to Mark with a message of thanks and headed to the parking garage. I found my beat-up old sedan, the one I'd been driving for a decade, its paint chipped in several places. Parked right next to it was a brand new Porsche, the very one Sarah had just gifted to Leo. The garage was full of empty spaces, but he had chosen to park right here. It was a clear provocation. 10 years with Sarah, and I meant less to her than Leo, who had been with the company for a mere 10 months. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Without another moment's hesitation, I hit the gas and drove away from the company I had helped build. I had just pulled out of the main gate when I was rear-ended. I got out of my car and saw Sarah and Leo emerging from the vehicle behind me. Daniel, why did you brake so hard? I didn't even have time to react, Leo said. He walked over, looking mournfully at the dented front of his car. Such a shame. Sarah picked this out herself. Sarah's expression grew even more grim. Daniel, I saw you staring at Leo's car in the garage. Be honest, did you do this on purpose? Did you know he was behind you and brake check him just to get back at him? I almost laughed out loud. Here we go again. She was blaming me without even knowing the facts. Leo sighed dramatically. It's okay, Sarah. Let's not blame Daniel. He lost his job because of me, so it's only natural he'd be angry. It's all my fault, really. I should have been paying more attention. As he said this, he made a fist and moved to hit his own forehead in frustration, pulling the punch at the last second. Sarah, completely oblivious, rushed to rub his forehead. "It's not your fault, honey," she cooed. "Don't blame yourself for everything." As she turned and jabbed a finger into my forehead. "Why can't you be more like Leo? Take some responsibility for once. He knows how to be humble. You've been in this business for years. Are you still going to be this immature and arrogant?" I stumbled back from her push, a bitter laugh rising in my throat. For the past year, Leo had been stealing my accomplishments and scheming to pin his mistakes on me. And now he was the humble one, and I was the arrogant child. I knew there was no point in arguing, so I turned to leave. But Sarah stopped me again. I braced myself for another lecture defending Leo, but instead, she pulled me aside. "Daniel," she said, her voice suddenly earnest, "I'm only so hard on you because I have such high expectations. Why can't you see that I'm just trying to help you grow?" Her gentle tone left me momentarily confused, but I quickly understood her true purpose. Sarah patted my shoulder. "I'll tear up your resignation letter. I want you to think about apologizing to Leo. And by the way, you're at fault for the accident, so you'll be paying for the damages." It clicked. I glanced over at Leo. He clearly knew what Sarah was going to say. His face was a mask of smug satisfaction, and he shot me a defiant eye roll. I scoffed. "I'm not paying a dime. You can check the traffic laws to see who's at fault in a rear-end collision, or we can call the cops. I have to go." I turned and walked away. Behind me, Sarah was fuming. "I gave you a chance, Daniel. You're going to regret this." "Regret? Not a chance." I got back in my car and sent a text to Mark. "I quit. I can start at your company tomorrow." He called me back in less than a second, his voice ecstatic. "Are you serious?" He sounded a little hesitant. "But what about Sarah?" Mark and Sarah had launched their startups around the same time. But unlike Sarah, who had started with nothing, Mark had better resources and could offer a much more attractive package. Mark was desperate for a lead engineer and had offered me a larger equity stake and a better salary to join him. He even knew about my commitment to Sarah and had offered to let me work for him part-time. But for Sarah, I had turned him down without a second thought. At the lowest point in my life, I was nearly freezing to death on a street in downtown Austin during a freak snowstorm. It was Sarah who found me and dragged me to a police station, saving my life. I was eternally grateful, so I abandoned everything else to pour my entire being into her company, doing whatever it took to help it succeed. But now, it seems she didn't care about any of that. And after all these years, I figured I had more than repaid my debt to her. There was no reason to keep sacrificing myself. "Don't worry about her," I told Mark. "This is my decision." After confirming a time to sign a contract with Mark, I drove home to pack my things. I had bought the house with my own money, but it was filled with too many memories of Sarah. I couldn't stay there anymore. I started by cleaning under the bed, where I found a collection of scattered charcoal sketches. There were drawings of a girl smiling, looking pensive, peeling an apple with her head down, and putting on makeup in a mirror. They were all of Sarah, each expression captured with a vibrant, living energy. I had drawn them all for her. She used to love when I sketched her, treating each drawing like a precious treasure to be framed and saved. But ever since Leo showed up, she had grown impatient with it. She called it old-fashioned, a waste of time when you could just snap a picture with a phone. She didn't like me drawing her anymore. And so these drawings, once treasured, were now just shoved under the bed. The paper was yellowed and brittle. The images faded. I smiled bitterly. I gathered them up, put them in a metal basin in the bathroom, and lit one of the corners. The flames consumed the paper until nothing was left but a pile of ash. It felt like our love, which had been quietly burning away until it was gone. After that, I threw out everything else I could. I didn't own much, but the apartment still felt stark and empty afterward. I collapsed onto the sofa and pulled out my phone, planning to look for apartments near Mark's office. But the first thing I saw was a new picture Leo had posted in the company group chat. It was a photo of him and Sarah at an arcade. She was holding an armful of stuffed animals, beaming at the camera with a genuine, radiant smile. I hadn't seen her smile like that in a long time. I tried to take her to an arcade once, but we had barely gotten inside and exchanged our cash for tokens before she turned to leave. She called me childish and said she was too busy to waste time on something so pointless. She had no time for me, but she had plenty of time for Leo. I scoffed. It wasn't the arcade she found pointless. It was me. In the group chat, colleagues were already fawning over the picture, praising how beautiful Sarah looked and complimenting the photographer. Someone even joked about when they were tying the knot. Everyone in the company knew I was Sarah's fiancé, but they felt comfortable making jokes like that because Sarah made no effort to hide her flirtatious relationship with Leo at work. Normally, this would have sent me into a rage, and I would have called Sarah to tell her to be more professional. But now I felt nothing. I pretended I hadn't seen it and went back to my apartment's search. When I glanced at my phone again a few minutes later, I saw that several messages, including Leo's original photo, had been deleted from the chat. I assumed Sarah would be out late, but a short while later, she walked into the living room, laughing on the phone with Leo. When she saw me, a flicker of guilt crossed her face before it hardened. She shot me an exaggerated eye roll and disappeared into the bedroom. I knew she was waiting for me to come and smooth things over. Every time we fought at work, I was always the one to apologize and beg for her forgiveness. Even when she was clearly in the wrong, I would swallow my pride and take the blame. I used to tell myself it was my duty, that I owed it to her to keep the peace and preserve our relationship. But now it all just felt exhausting. I looked back down at my phone and continued what I was doing. A few moments later, she emerged from the bedroom, her expression sullen. "Did you see that message in the group chat?" "What message?" I asked, playing dumb. I didn't look up, but I sensed her relax slightly. "Oh, nothing. Just a work thing posted in the wrong chat." I found it amusing, but couldn't be bothered to call her out. I just wondered how many other secrets she and Leo were keeping from me. "Leo's car is already fixed. Have you gotten yours repaired yet?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence. I recognized this as her offering me an olive branch. In the past, I would have taken this as a sign of forgiveness and immediately started trying to get back in her good graces. But now, without looking up, I just said, "It's a clunker. Not worth the repair costs." Sarah frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked up, genuinely confused by her reaction. My car had gotten dinged up before, and whenever I mentioned getting it fixed, she'd said the exact same thing. I expected her to lose her temper, but instead, she sighed. "Look, I know you're still upset about what happened at the office, but Leo has been doing excellent work, and the car was a bonus to make sure we retain top talent." I almost laughed out loud. Sarah had hired Leo as a special exception, and his performance was a disaster. The list of his mistakes was endless. They ranged from the small, like ordering himself a fancy latte in a client meeting while getting the client tap water, to the catastrophic, like sending a partner our internal cost breakdown instead of the official price quote, costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. We would have been better off hiring a dog. If I didn't know better, I might have actually believed her. I remained silent, and Sarah continued. "You're my fiancé. When we get married, this company will be yours too. Why are you so obsessed with a paycheck? Why do you have to be so competitive with him?" "Daniel, everything I do is for the good of the company. I can't have people thinking I'm playing favorites with you." I knew that was just an excuse. Everyone at the office saw how she treated me versus how she treated Leo. I'd spend 3 sleepless nights finishing a project, only for her to hand it off to Leo at the last minute. He'd make a simple slide deck and get all the credit. I'd spend days courting a new client, and right before they signed, she'd take Leo to a celebratory dinner with them. And suddenly, it was Leo who had closed the deal. The list went on and on. Over time, everyone just assumed she favored Leo. They started to think she actively disliked me, and I began to catch a lot of grief from other employees. She saw it all happening and did nothing. I didn't bother explaining. She would have just accused me of making excuses anyway. "Okay," I said flatly. "You don't have to justify it to me. I'm not with the company anymore. You can run it however you see fit." Sarah was silent. Finally, she sighed. She walked over to me, stood on her tiptoes, and wrapped her arms around my neck, her breath warm against my skin. To be honest, I was also being a little selfish. I wanted you to take a break, maybe start thinking about our wedding. "So, when are you going to propose?" she asked with a playful smile. I had already proposed to her multiple times, and she had rejected me every single time. Whenever we had a big fight, she would dangle the prospect of marriage in front of me to win me back. Sometimes I felt less like her fiancé and more like a train dog. I said nothing. She scratched me under the chin as if I were a pet. "Don't be mad anymore. Give me a smile, okay?" Then, in a deliberate attempt to placate me, she leaned in for a kiss. I could smell his cologne on her. A wave of nausea washed over me. I pushed her away, my face twisting in disgust as I pulled out a wipe to clean my hand where I'd touched her. Sarah froze, looking as if I'd slapped her. "Are you disgusted by me? I have to go out later. I'm going to get changed," I said flatly, turning toward the bedroom. Sarah started to follow, but I shut the door in her face and locked it. "Fine, Daniel," she yelled from the other side. "You'll regret this." Sarah sounded genuinely furious. She kicked the door hard and then stormed out of the apartment. When I finally emerged, the living room was empty. A new message from Sarah popped up in the company group chat. She was taking everyone out for dinner and wanted to know who was coming. The chat was silent. Then, Leo replied with 3 joyful emojis. I knew Sarah was doing this just to spite me. It was a familiar pattern. The other colleagues would decline, but Leo would always be enthusiastically on board. In the past, my jealousy would have compelled me to tag along, where I'd inevitably be the butt of their jokes. Now, I just didn't care. I got dressed, went to see a potential apartment, and, after checking it out, paid the deposit on the spot. Next, I called a real estate agent about selling my current place. Even though I had paid for it and managed all the renovations myself, I had put the deed in Sarah's name. Back then, we didn't have much money, and I'd used my entire life savings to buy the house, wanting to give her a sense of security. Now that the company was so successful, I doubted this small house meant anything to her. The agent informed me that to sell the house, Sarah would either have to be present for the closing or sign a power of attorney. I had no choice but to try and contact her. I sent her an iMessage, but it immediately failed to deliver with a red notification. She had blocked my number. This was her move. Whenever we had a major fight, she would block me and storm out. Worried for her safety, I would have to borrow someone else's phone to call her, humbly begging her to unblock me. On the other end, she would condescendingly ask if I was ready to admit I was wrong. Looking back, the number of things I said against my better judgment just to appease her was staggering. After a moment's thought, I called her anyway. "I need you to come home tonight. We need to talk about something." "What is it?" "I'm busy," she replied coldly. Her voice was ice. I pressed my lips together. "Let's just talk when you get here." Sarah scoffed. "So, you push me away, and now you snap your fingers and expect me to come running? Daniel, what do I owe you? Is this how you apologize? Have I been too nice to you lately? Did you forget how to say you're sorry?" Listening to her taunts, I fell back into the old routine. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I was wrong." I'd said it insincerely countless times before. One more time made no difference. Besides, this apology was the key to selling the house. Even though I had paid for it, if Sarah decided to be difficult and refused to sign, I'd be stuck. Even with bank statements proving I bought it, I'd have to take her to court. She could afford a legal battle. I couldn't. As expected, her tone softened after my apology. "I'll be there," she said, then hung up. I remained calm, listed the house online, and priced it to sell quickly. With that done, I met up with Mark to sign my employment contract. He was thrilled, asking me repeatedly if this was real, and he insisted on taking me out for a celebratory dinner. I had intended to head home early, but then I figured Sarah wouldn't be back for hours, so I agreed to go. A few drinks in, I went to the restroom and heard a familiar voice coming from the adjacent private dining room. I stopped instinctively. Through a crack in the door, I saw Sarah nestled in Leo's arms, laughing uncontrollably at something he'd said. Seizing the moment, Leo leaned down and quickly kissed her on the lips. Sarah froze for a second, but made no move to push him away. "Sarah, when are you going to break up with Daniel?" Leo asked. "I can't wait any longer. Do you have any idea how much it hurts to see you with him every day? Do you still love him more than me?" Leo asked, his voice full of hurt. Sarah's lips parted as if to speak, but then she simply hugged him back, patting his back soothingly like he was a child. "How could he ever compare to you?" she murmured. "It's just, the company is so much bigger now. If I break up with him to be with you, people will talk. I don't want it to affect your reputation. Just give me a little more time. It won't be long." "Oh, I see. I knew you loved me most," he replied. They held each other closely, looking for all the world like a couple in love. I scoffed and walked away. I went back to our table and had a few more drinks. We all shared old stories until the early hours of the morning. As we were heading into the parking garage, Mark suddenly pulled me over to a top-of-the-line Porsche and asked if I liked it. Confused, I nodded. I assumed it was his new car and was about to compliment it when he suddenly pressed the keys into my hand. "It's yours," he said with a grin. "I couldn't stand to see you driving that old wreck anymore. Time for an upgrade." I started to refuse, but he cut me off. "I heard Sarah bought her new hire a car. If a hack like him gets a luxury vehicle, the man who actually built the company deserves one too. Speaking of which, I've seen some of that kid's work. His style is all over the place. It's obvious he's just copying other people's designs. I have no idea how he's still employed. Maybe it was the alcohol, but Mark didn't hold back, launching into a tirade about Leo. I listened in silence. He was right. All of Leo's work had actually been done by me and my team. Almost every project, right as we were about to finish, Sarah would order us to hand it over to Leo. That's why his style was so inconsistent. Even Mark, an outsider, could see what was happening. But Sarah remained willfully blind. I tried to refuse again, but Mark feigned annoyance. It's not a gift, it's a signing bonus. We'll just deduct it from your future paychecks. Don't make me regret being generous. I had to laugh. And my new salary, it would take years to pay off a car like this. I knew it was just his way of getting me to accept, so I thanked him. We chatted for a few more minutes, then called for drivers to take us home. I didn't expect Sarah to be back yet, but when I opened the door, she was sitting on the living room sofa. "Where have you been?" she demanded the moment I walked in. "We were supposed to meet. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting?" I was surprised. Usually, when she went out with Leo, she wasn't home until 3 or 4 in the morning. It was rare for her to be home this early. Then the image of her and Leo embracing in the restaurant flashed in my mind, and I felt my stomach turn. I was out to dinner with a friend, I said evenly, walking into the living room and taking the power of attorney form out of my bag. I had barely taken 2 steps when she blocked my path, her brow furrowed. "You've been drinking? Didn't we agree you wouldn't drink when I'm not here?" I had to scoff. What she really meant was that I was only allowed to drink when it was for her business. I didn't answer. A slow smile spread across her face, a smug look in her eyes. "You're still upset that I went out with Leo, aren't you? If you don't want me having dinner with him, you just have to say so. There's no need to go out and get drunk about it. You're reading too much into it. This has nothing to do with you," I said, steadying myself on a chair as I sat down. I handed her the document. "You need to look at this." She took it, raising an eyebrow. "What's this? A written apology? Let me save you the trouble. It's too late for apologies. I'm still furious about what happened this afternoon. Don't think some grand gesture is going to make me forgive you." Her smugness was almost comical. It was true. Once, after a particularly bad fight, I had written her a long, heartfelt letter of apology to win her back. She had her faults, yes, but looking back, I realized I was the one who had handed her my self-respect on a platter for her to stomp on. "Well, not anymore. It's not an apology," I said calmly. "It's a surprise." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. She was about to open it when her phone started ringing. Her eyes lit up when she saw the caller ID. "Hold on, I have to take this." She answered immediately. "Sarah, I think I just hit someone with my car. What do I do?" "I'm freaking out." Leo's panicked voice came through the phone. Sarah's expression turned to one of alarm. "Send me your location. I'm on my way." She stood up, ready to leave, completely forgetting about me. I stepped in front of her, holding the document out. "Let's finish this first. This needs your signature, and it's urgent." Sarah stared at me for a second, then sighed. "Daniel, can you please have some empathy? His situation is a little more pressing than yours right now. This jealousy is really not a good look on you." I almost laughed. My behavior was unbecoming, but Leo driving drunk was perfectly fine. I didn't want to argue. I just held the document out, waiting. Sarah said nothing more and flipped it open. Before she could even read the first line, Leo's shriek came through the phone. "Ow, why are you hitting me?" "Sarah, don't panic. I'm almost there," she said, though she sounded far more panicked than he did. Without even glancing at the document, she flipped to the last page, scribbled her signature, and rushed for the door. As she hurried away, I couldn't resist calling out. "Aren't you even going to look at what you just signed?" "What's to look at?" she called back over her shoulder. "The surprises you bring are always just some small-time contracts. I trust you to handle the details." And with that, she was gone. I had to laugh. In the early days, I used to surprise her by closing deals on my own. She loved it back then. But as our company grew, she started to look down on the smaller, scrappy businesses we used to be. She used to read every contract multiple times, terrified of missing some crucial detail. Now, in her panic over Leo, she had signed a legal document without even reading the title. It worked out for me, though. It saved me a lot of trouble. Sarah didn't come home that night. Instead, I got a series of texts from Leo. "Daniel, I know you saw us at the restaurant, so you must realize by now that she prefers me. All it takes is one phone call, and she comes running. You should just back off now before things get ugly for everyone." I scoffed. So he was finally done playing games. I knew showing these texts to Sarah would be pointless. She was so infatuated with him. She'd just accused me of trying to stir up trouble. Still, I wasn't going to let his taunts go unanswered. I texted back, "Congratulations. Just remember to bow out gracefully when she eventually gets tired of you, too." I knew it wasn't a devastating blow, but it was enough to get under his skin. Sure enough, the messages stopped. I went to bed early And first thing in the morning, I emailed the signed power of attorney to my real estate agent. That same afternoon, I had a potential buyer come for a viewing. He was happy with the location, the layout, and the price, but my eagerness to sell made him suspicious. "It's a great house," he said cautiously. "Why the low price? Is there something wrong with it?" I explained briefly that I'd bought it with my fiancée, but the engagement was now off. He nodded in understanding. "I can tell. The garden, the interior design, it all has a woman's touch. Probably for the best to sell it. No point in being surrounded by memories." I didn't respond. Sarah had been incredibly particular about the house. I had spent 3 months looking at over 100 properties before I found this one that met all her criteria. I had even designed the entire renovation based on her tastes. It was only then that I realized how completely my life had revolved around her for the past decade. The buyer was decisive. He made an offer that night, and we scheduled the closing for 2 days later. Perfect timing. My new life would also begin in 2 days. When I got home after signing the papers, I saw a pair of men's dress shoes by the front door. My own slippers, which I usually left there, were gone. I already had a pretty good idea of what was going on. I unwrapped a pair of disposable guest slippers and went inside. I just stepped inside when I heard Leo's voice. "Sarah, that's not how you do it. Here, let me show you." I walked to the kitchen doorway and saw them standing at the sink. Leo was behind her, his arms wrapped around her as he guided her hands. It was an intimate pose. He was wearing my sweatpants and my slippers, looking every bit the man of the house. Sarah, in a matching set, seemed completely at ease with his proximity. They looked comfortable, happy. They laughed at some shared joke. I remembered how she used to flinch if I got too close, telling me she just wasn't a physically affectionate person. Apparently, that wasn't the problem. The problem was me. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. Just then, Sarah turned and saw me. She froze, then quickly pulled away from Leo, a guilty look on her face. "What are you doing home so early?" I found her question absurd, as if I were the one in the wrong. "Sorry, Daniel," Leo said, though his eyes were gleaming with triumph. "I was just showing Sarah how to wash these vegetables. Don't get the wrong idea." He looked like he was dying to see me have a jealous meltdown. And in the past, I would have started a huge fight with Sarah and demanded she kick him out. But now I was just tired. I was leaving, the house was sold, the money was in my account. I couldn't be bothered. "Well, you two carry on. I'm just going to my room," I said calmly and walked toward the bedroom. Leo looked stunned, clearly confused by my lack of reaction. Sarah, who had likely braced herself for a fight, also seemed thrown off. For the first time ever, she actually offered an explanation. "It's Leo's birthday today. He wanted to celebrate with us, so I invited him over." In the past, she would have just rolled her eyes and said, "If you don't like it, you can leave." I laughed internally. I wasn't sure what was more ironic, the fact that she was finally explaining herself now that I no longer cared, or the fact that she couldn't remember my birthday but was throwing a party for his. "You two had a good time," I said. With that, I went into my room and closed the door. I had already packed most of my things and moved them to the new apartment. All that was left was a suitcase with some clothes and a few books. I was wondering if I should finish packing tonight when the door swung open. It was Leo, holding a small plate with a slice of cake. He glanced around the nearly empty room and let out a chuckle. "Wow, this room is a lot emptier than the last time I was here. I guess you're finally taking the hint and getting out," he said. I ignored him and went back to texting Mark about the move. Annoyed at being ignored, Leo's face darkened and he stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf?" I glanced up at him. "Why do you care? It's not like you'll be living here." My simple comment seemed to enrage him. His face contorted with anger, and he reached for my collar. Before I could react, we heard footsteps approaching the door. In a flash, Leo threw the plate of cake onto the floor, let out a cry, and collapsed. "Leo, what happened?" Sarah cried, rushing into the room. She shoved me out of the way to help him up. I stumbled backward, and a sharp piece of the broken plate pierced through my slipper and into my heel, drawing blood. But Sarah didn't even notice. Her eyes were fixed on a faint white scratch on Leo's hand, one that wasn't even bleeding. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Leo whimpered. "I made Daniel angry again. I just wanted everyone to have some of my birthday cake, so I brought a slice in for him. I didn't know he'd hate it so much." He looked up at Sarah, his eyes red, the picture of innocence. If I hadn't been there, I might have believed in myself. The truth was, I never said I disliked cake. In fact, I loved it, probably because I'd rarely had a chance to eat it growing up. I used to talk about it every year on my birthday. Sarah would tease me, saying she'd never met a guy who loved cake so much. But now, with Leo standing there, she had apparently forgotten. She pointed a finger in my face. So you don't like it? Does that give you the right to throw things and assault him? Daniel, I thought you were past this, but you're still the same petty person you've always been. Apologize to Leo right now. Otherwise, I can't be with someone this jealous. We should just break up. She glared at me, her fury so theatrical it was almost funny. I thought back to what I'd overheard at the restaurant. She had threatened to break up with me before, during our worst fights. Back then, I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. I would always be the one to back down, to plead, to grovel. I'd even gotten on my knees and beg her once. I always told myself she didn't really mean it, that it was just her ultimate weapon, her way of giving me a chance to make things right. Only later did I realize the truth. She probably wanted to break up all along, which is why the threat came so easily to her lips. But it didn't matter. I was already planning to end things. If she hadn't brought it up, I would have. Seeing my silence, Sarah must have thought she had me scared because her tone softened. You've been acting so secretive lately. I assume you were making wedding plans. I know you don't want to break up. Just apologize to Leo, and we can. Before she could finish, I cut her off. No, I said calmly. I agree. Let's break up. The smug smile on Sarah's face vanished, replaced by disbelief. What did you just say? You wanted to break up, right? I agree. I repeated, my voice even. I had assumed she would be thrilled, that this was exactly what she wanted. But strangely, her voice held no trace of relief, only shock and anger. Daniel, have you lost your mind? You're ending our engagement over this. She stared at me wide-eyed. I didn't get it. Wasn't this what she wanted? Why was she so upset that I agreed? Leo seemed confused too. He gently tugged on her sleeve. Sarah, he's the one who agreed to it. Maybe it's for the best. Before he could finish, Sarah spun on him. Shut up. This has nothing to do with you. It was the first time I'd ever heard her speak to him so harshly. Leo froze, his mouth hanging open. Sarah seemed to catch herself. She softened her voice. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Can you just wait outside for a minute? I don't want you to get dragged into this. Leo's eyes were red with frustration, but he was smart enough not to argue. He quietly left the room. After he was gone, Sarah took a deep breath. She was about to speak when her eyes fell on my foot. Her voice softened. You're bleeding. Why didn't you say anything? I'll get the first aid kit. She walked over to the bookshelf, but I knew what she was doing. It was just a tactic to change the subject. Whenever a conversation got uncomfortable for her, she would feign concern for me to derail it. I used to fall for it every time, clinging to the illusion that she still cared. The real issue would get buried, unresolved. But the problems never went away. They just festered, waiting to erupt later in an even uglier form. Where is that kit? I know it was here, Sarah muttered to herself, rummaging through the shelves. She seemed to have forgotten that the last time she'd set foot in this room was 2 years ago. After the time I had a 104-degree fever and she'd left to go on a date with Leo, I had moved the first aid kit to the bathroom cabinet. Daniel, why is your room so empty? Sarah finally realized something was wrong. I didn't hide it. I sold the house, I told her. The buyer is closing in 2 days. You should probably arrange to have your things moved out by tomorrow. Sarah froze, her face clouding with anger. Then a thought seemed to strike her, and she laughed. Stop messing around, Daniel. My name is on the deed too. You can't sell it without my signature. Okay, I get it, you're mad. I'll tell Leo to leave. Just stop this nonsense, all right? She still didn't believe me. I picked up the sales agreement from my desk and handed it to her. There's a power of attorney form at the back with your signature. The agent said that's all we need. Oh, and you signed it the night Leo called you about his accident. You remember that, don't you? Even if you don't, it's still legally binding. Sarah took the folder, and when she flipped to the final page, her body went rigid. A moment later, she erupted. Who gave you permission to sell my house? She shrieked. I scoffed. I'm walking away from the company without a dime. But I paid for this house in full. I think that gives me the right to sell it. Besides, I seem to recall you buying a new house for Leo out in the suburbs. You're not exactly going to be homeless. You can move in there. By any reasonable measure, I was in the right. Sarah was left speechless, her face pale. I expected her to finally accept that we were over. Instead, she took a deep breath, visibly forcing herself to be calm. That house was supposed to be a gift for you, not for Leo, she explained, her voice low. I only put his name on it to make him feel more secure at the company. If it bothers you, I can have his name removed. We've been together for 10 years. We can't just throw that all away. Daniel, I know you're upset right now. Just take some time to cool off. We can talk about this tomorrow. And with that, she turned and walked out. This was her classic move. Whenever we had a fight we couldn't resolve, she would act as if she were the bigger person, the one who still loved me, and tell me to calm down. And every time, I would be the one to talk myself down, to convince myself to believe her, to not be impulsive. I would be the one to break the silence, to apologize, and to make things right. At first, it was because I truly loved her. Later, when I knew her heart was no longer in it, I did it because I couldn't bear to throw away all those years we'd spent together. I kept telling myself that if I could just get through this one rough patch, things would get better. But things never got better. It was all just wishful thinking on my part. She probably assumed I would fall back in line, just like all the other times. She was wrong. Whatever was left of our relationship had been eroded away, one disappointment at a time. After Sarah left, I swept up the broken plate and bandaged my foot. By the time I came out of the bedroom, she and Leo were gone. The remnants of their dinner were still on the table, along with a half-melted birthday candle on the floor. I had always been the one to clean the apartment. I never wanted her to have to lift a finger. Eventually, she just came to expect it. I didn't bother cleaning up their mess. The place needed a deep clean before the closing anyway. I decided I'd hire a service tomorrow, took a shower, and went to bed. The next morning, however, I walked out to find the apartment spotless. Sarah was in the kitchen, wearing an apron, busy at the stove. "I was just about to wake you," she said with a smile, acting as if yesterday's drama had never happened. I cleaned the whole place, even disinfected everything. In the past, I would have pretended not to notice the streaks on the floor or the smudges on the windows. I would have praised her effusively, giving her the validation she craved. Now I just scoffed and said, "Oh." Sarah looked disappointed by my cold response, but she quickly recovered her smile and brought 2 plates out from the kitchen. "I made breakfast. You should try it." I glanced down. It was 2 cheeseburgers. They actually looked decent. To be fair, it was the first time she had ever made me breakfast, which should have been a touching gesture. Except she seemed to have forgotten one crucial detail. "I'm allergic to cheese," I said. The color drained from her face. "Oh, right. I'll make you something else. Don't bother. Let's just end this peacefully. It's better for both of us." At the last company holiday party, she had remembered every single one of Leo's dietary restrictions. No lamb, no ginger, no garlic. Yet she had forgotten that I once had an allergic reaction to cheese so severe it landed me in the emergency room. The difference between love and indifference was stark, but Sarah didn't see it that way. She frowned, annoyed. "People in relationships don't hold on to grudges, Daniel. I'm already humbling myself here. Why do you have to be so difficult? I have a million things on my mind with the company. Is it so strange that I forgot one little thing?" "Yeah," I nodded. "And it's perfectly normal for us to break up." That was the last straw. Sarah slammed her plate down on the table with a deafening crash. She glared at me, her patience completely gone, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. This was the beginning of her silent treatment. I sighed, hired a cleaning service to deal with the mess, and packed up the last of her belongings. I had them shipped to her new house in the suburbs. I was used to packing her suitcases for business trips, so it didn't take long. The closing went through smoothly on the scheduled day. Sarah seemed to finally grasp that I wasn't bluffing this time. She sent me a string of mocking texts, and when I didn't respond, she started flooding her Facebook with pictures of herself and Leo. I was busy with my new job, so I didn't notice at first. Then I saw a flood of notifications on my phone. She had posted about going to Safari Park with Leo one day and a hot air balloon ride the next. The day after that, she posted that because the company was doing so well, she was rewarding Leo with a trip to Hawaii. In the photos, she deliberately flashed the matching rings they wore. The caption read, "The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's the quiet ones who truly deserve the reward." I knew she was doing it all to get a reaction out of me. She was waiting for me to get jealous, to get angry, to come crawling back to her. Then she could condescendingly lay out her terms for taking me back. But I just didn't care anymore. As I was closing the app, my thumb slipped and I accidentally liked one of her posts. Worried it would just cause more drama, I quickly unliked it and then unfollowed her profile. Then I went back to focusing on my work. My joining Mark's company had a huge impact. Our tech improved dramatically, which allowed our business development team to land a massive 8-figure partnership. One day, as Mark and I were heading to a meeting to finalize the contract, I got a text. To my surprise, it was from Sarah. It was an image. I opened it, confused. It was a picture of a positive pregnancy test report with her name on it. A second later, another text came through. "How does that make you feel?" I didn't reply. She immediately sent another message. Just kidding. It's fake. But be honest. When you saw it, didn't you feel even a little bit jealous? Could you really handle me having another man's baby? I found it almost funny. I hadn't even realized it until she pointed it out. In the past, seeing her with another guy would have sent me into a jealous rage. My face would flush, my heart would pound. But now, I glanced at my reflection. My expression was composed, my breathing steady. Even my smartwatch showed my heart rate was perfectly normal. I had completely, utterly accepted that Sarah was no longer mine. I wasn't going to reply, but then I thought about Leo's earlier texts and decided to head off any future drama. Since you have a new boyfriend now, I texted back, you probably shouldn't be sending things like this to me. He might get the wrong idea. The typing bubble in our iMessage chat appeared and disappeared for a few minutes. Finally, a reply came through. Daniel, you can pretend all you want. Let's see how long you can keep up the act. If you didn't still love me, why would you be paying such close attention to my life? Don't think I didn't see that you liked my post. It was almost funny. The old Sarah never would have noticed such a small detail. It seemed her time with Leo really had changed her. She had changed more for him in a few months than she had for me in 10 years. Before I could reply, she sent another text. Nothing is going on with me and Leo. He was just helping me try to get us back together. For his sake, I'm giving you one last chance. I just smiled. No, thank you, I said, and ended the call. She probably still believed her games would eventually make me come running back. It didn't matter. In time, she would understand that I was serious. I also knew this wasn't about love. She was just worried about how it would look, about the office gossip that would start if people found out we'd broken up for good. Flirting with Leo was one thing. Leaving her fiancé of 10 years for him was another. I put her out of my mind and focused on work. That evening, Mark and I successfully closed the deal. Mark was ecstatic and introduced me to several other executives in our industry. He introduced me not as an employee, but as his partner. They all treated me with a level of respect that felt completely foreign to me. I had been in meetings with Sarah and people at this level before, but she always treated me like an incompetent subordinate, not her partner. As a result, they never took me seriously, sometimes even asking me to fetch them coffee. But I couldn't really blame her. She may have been the one doing it, but I was the one who had let her. As the night went on, we all got along famously, talking for hours. At some point in the conversation, one of the other CEOs, a man named Mr. Peterson, pulled me aside. Daniel, he said quietly, have you made an enemy of someone recently? I just saw your name pop up on an informal industry blacklist. Seeing the disbelief on my face, he pulled it up on his phone and showed me. It was an internal resource they used to avoid bad hires, a list of people with poor track records or ethical violations. And there, next to my photo, was my name. The reason listed was insubordinate, difficult to work with, prone to professional jealousy, poor character. I didn't have to guess who was behind it. Seeing my stunned silence, Mr. Peterson clapped me on the shoulder. Listen, I can tell you're not that kind of guy. Someone's clearly trying to sabotage you. Don't worry about it. I'll have my assistant remove your name from the list first thing in the morning. He was true to his word. I thanked him, but a bitter feeling remained. I was lucky to have powerful friends, but I couldn't help but think about a regular person who ended up on a list like that. What would happen to their career? It wasn't that the list itself was a bad idea. It probably saved companies a lot of headaches, but no one was going to waste time verifying the claims on it. They would just see the name and the accusation and move on. An innocent person on that list would face rejection after rejection. After enough setbacks, even the most talented and driven person would lose their confidence. What were they supposed to do then? Mark, seeing us still talking, drunkenly threw his arms around our shoulders and dragged us back to the table for another round. At the end of the night, we made sure everyone got into their cars safely. Mark stepped away to call his girlfriend, and I stood by the hotel entrance, waiting for my driver. I hadn't been waiting long when I heard a voice behind me. Well, Daniel, what are you doing here? I turned to see Leo and Sarah standing a few feet away. Leo's arm was draped around Sarah's waist, their bodies pressed close together like a couple deep in love. He saw me and smirked. Oh, I get it, Sarah, he said, leaning in to whisper to her. Daniel must be here looking for you. You two should talk. I'll give you some privacy. He made a show of stepping away, but I could tell he wasn't going anywhere. As expected, Sarah grabbed him and pulled him back, pressing herself against his chest in a clear display for my benefit. You're not an outsider. There's no need to leave, she said, then shot me a triumphant look. I thought you didn't want another chance. So what are you doing here? But I'm telling you now, it's too late. You missed your shot, Daniel. Her tone was imperious, a stark contrast to the sweet, docile woman she was with Leo. I knew she had the wrong idea. I was having dinner with a friend, I explained calmly. We were just leaving. Dinner with a friend? Leo repeated, then burst out laughing. Sorry, Daniel. I couldn't help myself. I'm just surprised. Now that you're unemployed, I didn't think you could afford to be so extravagant, eating at a place like this. I knew he was implying I was lying, putting on a brave face. Daniel, I never thought you'd sink this low, Sarah said, her eyes filled with disgust. At that point, I gave up trying to explain. She wouldn't believe me anyway, and it would just be a waste of breath. My silence, of course, she took as an admission of guilt, confirming Leo's suspicions. She smirked. Life's a lot harder without me, isn't it? Are you regretting your decision yet? I had to laugh. Clearly, she had no idea I was now a partner at Mark's company. Then again, she'd never shown much interest in my career. It made sense she wouldn't know now that we were broken up. I was about to set her straight when she sighed dramatically. I wasn't going to forgive you, she said, but we were together for so long. It's not like I feel nothing for you, and you did come all this way to find me. So I'll give you one more chance. Don't mess it up. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at Leo. He looked genuinely panicked, as if this was the first he was hearing of it. He didn't dare object directly, but after a moment, he stammered, Sarah, are you sure about this? Going back to an ex is never a good idea. I almost laughed out loud. This was clearly not part of their plan. Sarah ignored him and continued, a cold smile on her face. Did you hear him, Daniel? So many of my friends have told me not to take you back, that I should just cut my losses. They all think you're not good enough for me anymore. Do you have any idea how many people told me to leave you? But I kept giving you chances because of our history. I honestly don't know what got into you. What made you think breaking up with me was a good idea? Everyone else could see how good you had it. You were the only one who didn't appreciate it. She went on, and she was right in a way. Her net worth now dwarfed mine, a fact she had reminded me of many times. She had told me she was only staying with me out of a sense of loyalty to our shared past. I used to dismiss it as a joke, a part of our dynamic. It took me a long time to realize she was serious. In her mind, our relationship wasn't about love. It was about obligation, history, even charity. I was about to respond when Mark walked up. Daniel, who's this? He asked. I felt a wave of relief. Mark, these are some former colleagues of mine, I said. We just ran into each other. It was the same line Sarah used to use when she didn't want to introduce me as her fiancée. I thought she'd appreciate the discretion, but her expression only grew darker. I ignored her and made the introduction. This is my friend, Mark. Like I said, we were just having a business dinner. For some reason, this seemed to make her even angrier. Leo, however, recovered quickly. I'm surprised you have friends who can afford to take you to a place like this, Daniel, he said with a smirk. He looks like he's doing well for himself. What do you do, sir? Where do you work? Mark frowned and leaned in to whisper to me. What's this guy's problem? He sounds like an idiot. I just smiled. It's fine. You get used to it. Mark didn't press, but he could clearly see that Leo was hostile. I run a small business, Mark said nonchalantly. Nothing major. This seemed to delight Leo, who looked at Mark with open contempt. Tough time to be a small business owner, I bet. Must be a real grind. You should be more careful with your hard-earned money instead of wasting it at places like this. Mark immediately picked up on hostility. He turned to me and whispered, What's going on? Do you have a history with this guy? I decided not to hide it. The woman with him is my ex-fiancée, I murmured, and his current girlfriend. Mark already knew the whole story of how Sarah and I had built her company from scratch, and I had told him why we broke up. He let out a short, sharp laugh. Well, you should have said so. He turned back to Leo, a wide smile on his face. So, I take it you don't have to work hard for your money? What is it you do exactly? You don't exactly scream, captain of industry. You're not one of those guys who lives off his girlfriend, are you? Why you? Leo sputtered. Leo was furious and looked ready to throw a punch, but Sarah held him back. Enough, Daniel, she said, turning to me. I don't have the energy for these games. I know what this is about. I'll give you what you want. If you come back, I'll reinstate your old position and give you 10% of the company. Are you satisfied now? 10%. Before I could even process her offer, Mark burst out laughing. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but I've already hired him, and I gave him 40%. The color drained from Sarah's face, but then her expression hardened again. She looked at me coldly. Daniel, think carefully. Not all equity is created equal. A percentage is meaningless without knowing the valuation of the company. She was clearly implying that Mark's company was worthless compared to hers. It was true that, initially, Mark's company had lagged behind hers, mainly on the tech side. But now, with their technology platform completely overhauled, they had just landed that massive 8-figure deal. His company was now arguably more valuable than hers. Besides, I had serious doubts about the long-term viability of her company. Between her chaotic management style and her blatant favoritism toward Leo, it was only a matter of time before things fell apart. But there was no point in telling her that. She wouldn't have listened. Mark didn't engage with her further. "Is your driver here yet?" he asked me, pointedly ignoring Sarah. I was about to check my phone when a man in a driver's uniform hurried over. "Excuse me, sir, I'm your driver. Which car is it?" "My car's too flashy. Let's take yours," Mark said, nodding at me. I didn't think anything of it and handed the keys to the driver. Less than 2 minutes later, he pulled up in the brand new, fully loaded Porsche, looking a little nervous behind the wheel. "Sir, this is a beautiful car. Must have cost a fortune," the driver said. It took me a second to register he was talking to me. I glanced back. Leo was staring at the Porsche, his eyes wide with envy. Sarah was deep in thought, her expression unreadable but grim. Mark shot me a triumphant grin. "It's not that bad," he told the driver. "Just a couple $100,000. It was a company bonus. Actually," he added, turning to the driver, "my partner here is looking for a personal driver. We like you. How would you feel about a full-time job? Say $10,000 a month." The driver was floored. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. I can have HR send you an offer letter right now." "Yes, I'll do a great job, I promise." Mark and the driver started chatting excitedly. Sarah shot me one last icy glare before turning on her heel and stalking away, with Leo scrambling to catch up. A moment later, Mark had a verbal agreement with the driver. "You're actually hiring him?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. I was already planning on it. You're our lead engineer. You'll be doing a lot of networking, which means a lot of dinners and drinks. We can't rely on ride-sharing apps forever." "But isn't that salary a little high?" I asked. It was well above the market rate. At Sarah's company, my driver only made a fraction of that. Mark patted me on the shoulder. "Not all. When you've had a few too many, he's the man you're trusting with your life. It's a worthy investment." Seeing he had made up his mind, I dropped it. For the next few weeks, we were completely immersed in a new project. In my rare moments of downtime, I noticed that Sarah, who had been so active online, had gone silent. Even Leo had stopped his passive-aggressive posts. I figured our encounter at the hotel had gotten to them. I assumed that after that night, Sarah would finally give up and leave me alone. But one day, as we were in the final stages of the project, Mark pulled me aside, looking serious. "Sarah just called me," he said. Before I could ask why, he added, "She's probably going to call you next. Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. Don't worry about me or the company. That being said, I hope you don't let her manipulate you." With that cryptic warning, Mark left me to my work. I was confused, but I pushed it aside and focused on the task at hand. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. It was Sarah. When I answered, she didn't launch into her usual tirade. Instead, there was a rare silence on the other end of the line. It was so quiet I thought she might have hung up, but the call was still connected. "Daniel," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "Can we stop this? Can we just go back to how things were?" I almost laughed. Did she really still think this was all just some game to me? I remained silent. "I just spoke to Mark," she continued. "He told me he tried to get you to be his co-founder, but you turned him down to help me. I never realized how much you gave up for me. I admit, I've neglected you since Leo joined the company, but we've been together for 10 years. We were supposed to get married. Are we really going to throw all of that away because of the last 10 months? Her voice broke, thick with emotion. I paused, my mind drifting back. For 10 years, our life together might have been simple, but we had always been each other's rock. When things got tough, we cheered each other on. We faced every obstacle together, side by side. I remembered one time, after a brutal meeting with investors where I'd been forced to drink way too much, I could barely stand. Just before I passed out, I saw Sarah, tears streaming down her face, holding me up with one arm while desperately trying to dial 911 with the other. I woke up in the hospital, looking at her small, slender frame. I couldn't imagine how she had managed to hold me up until the paramedics arrived. I was in the hospital for a week, and she somehow juggled running the company and taking care of me. She must have really loved me then. The memory was so vivid. I was about to speak when another voice cut in from her end of the line. "Daniel, you should forgive her," Leo said. I'm so sorry for all the misunderstandings. I honestly never meant for any of this to happen. If you want, I'll quit tomorrow. I'll disappear from your lives completely." This time, Sarah didn't stop him. She let him speak. I felt a strange mix of emotions. He made it sound like some tragic romance, with me as the villain tearing them apart. So what if he quit? He would just become her tragic, lost love. Over time, her memory of him would become romanticized, idealized. Their what-if story would fester until it eventually exploded, far more dramatically than anything we were dealing with now. I scoffed, but then I said, "Fine, I'll come back, but on one condition." "Name it," she said, her voice grim. A small smile played on my lips. "Give me 50% of the company and half of all your personal assets." I knew she would never agree. She was well aware that her money and her company were the only reasons Leo was with her. As I expected, the line went silent for a full 5 minutes. Finally, it was Leo who broke the silence. "Daniel, that's an insane demand," he said, his voice dripping with indignation. "Do you have any idea how hard a woman like Sarah has to work to build a company this successful? And you, a man, think you could just swoop in and take half of it? Have you no shame?" I didn't bother pointing out his hypocrisy. "Sarah," I said calmly, "we're adults. We both know you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't get everything you want without giving anything up. Why should you be the exception? You have 3 days to think about it." With that, I hung up. I assumed that would be the end of it, that she would give up. But that evening, she called me again. She said 50% was too much and offered 20. I told her my offer was non-negotiable. 50% or she should stop calling me. Her persistence, however, did make me wonder. It seemed Sarah genuinely didn't want us to be over. But why? She was the one who had been pushing for it. She mentioned worrying about her reputation, but that didn't seem like a strong enough reason for her to be this desperate. I didn't dwell on it. 3 days passed with no word from her. We successfully completed the project, and to celebrate, Mark threw a huge party for the entire team. At the party, everyone let loose, forgetting the stress of the past few weeks. It was after midnight when I finally got home. I just drifted off to sleep when my phone rang. It was Sarah. Annoyed at being woken up, I fumbled to hang up. But I was still a little drunk and my fingers were clumsy. I accidentally answered the call instead. "Hello, is this Daniel Miller?" a man's voice asked. "A Miss Sarah Thompson is here at our bar. She's had too much to drink and won't leave. We found her number in her contacts. We're worried about her. Could you please come pick her up?" That sobered me up quickly. "I'm sorry. You'll have to call someone else." "But sir, she insists," the man said, his voice strained. "She said that if anything happens to her, she's holding you responsible." I had to laugh. I sat up in bed. "Fine, send me the address." The man sounded relieved. A moment later, a location pin popped up on my phone. I glanced at it, then dialed 911. I gave the dispatcher the details and the address, then put my phone on silent and went back to sleep. When I woke up, I had over a dozen missed calls and dozens of angry texts from Sarah. They started with shock that I called the police, then escalated to her calling me a cold-blooded, heartless monster who only cared about money. Finally, they devolved into desperate pleas, asking why I was being so cruel. She claimed she had only made a small mistake, one that anyone could make, that she hadn't really betrayed me. Before I could finish reading, she was calling again. My first instinct was to decline, but I knew that if I didn't settle this now, she would just keep harassing me. So I answered. Her voice was hoarse and subdued. "Daniel, I've thought about it. I admit it. You win. I can't live without you. I'll give you half the company, half of everything I own. Just come back." I raised an eyebrow and glanced at the date. It had been 5 days. "Sorry," I said. "Your 3 days are up. I've changed my mind." "Daniel," Sarah started to say, but was cut off by a violent coughing fit. When it finally subsided, her voice was barely a whisper. "How could you have changed so much?" I just smiled. This was her move. How many times had she docked my pay or given my project to Leo because I was a few hours past some arbitrary deadline? I was just giving her a taste of her own medicine. It's true what they say. You never know how much it hurts until it happens to you. She seemed to understand my point, to finally realize this was never about the money. She let out a bitter, self-mocking laugh. "Daniel, I don't even recognize you anymore," she said, then broke into another coughing fit, her breathing ragged and painful. I almost asked if she was okay, but I stopped myself. I didn't want her to misinterpret it as concern. I decided to stay silent, but it was as if she could read my mind. "I have a fever," she said, her voice weak. "Daniel, I'm at her old house. I bought it back. I was just wondering That time you had that high fever and I wasn't there, did you feel as awful as I do right now? I didn't answer. The sketches you drew of me, she went on, they're all gone. I've looked everywhere. Daniel, did you pack them away somewhere? Or did you throw them out? She sounded like a lost child, her voice trembling with a growing sense of despair. I could hear rustling on her end, as if she were frantically searching. I sighed. I burned them. Sarah went quiet for a moment, then let out a hollow laugh. The laughter died, replaced by quiet sobbing. This house is filled with memories of us, she wept. But I can't find a single physical trace that we were ever here. How could you be so cruel? To sell the house, to have it scrubbed clean of us, to just walk away so completely. What was I supposed to do? I took Leo's name off the deed of the other house. I was trying to fix things. Why wouldn't you even give me a chance? Her sobs grew louder, her voice raw. The old me would have been heartbroken. I never could stand to see her cry. But the new me knew this wasn't about remorse. She was just sick and feeling vulnerable. Given the chance, she would make all the same choices again. Stop torturing yourself. Call Leo and have him take you to the hospital. I have to get ready for work. With that, I hung up. When I decided to walk away, I had resolved never to look back. Her life, for better or for worse, was no longer my concern. I got up, got ready, and drove to the office. The moment I walked in, I was hit by a wave of celebratory energy. Before I could even ask what was going on, Mark grabbed me, his face beaming. The client launched our project. It hit 80 million impressions in the first 2 hours. They're thrilled. They want to sign a long-term retainer. This client was a huge name in the industry. Landing a long-term contract with them was a massive win. Mark gave everyone on the project team a raise that month, and morale was sky high. I used my bonus and the money from the sale of the old house to buy a new place. This time, I chose it for myself. It was a condo a little outside the city, overlooking Lake Travis. The view was incredible. I even took the time to draw up the design plans for the renovation myself. I had done the same for the old house. Sarah had hated every design the architect showed her. So, knowing her taste, I took a 2-month course in interior design software and did it myself. I had revised the plans again and again to meet her exacting standards. I'm not bragging, but the final result was perfectly suited to her tastes. That's why, when she told me she bought it back, I didn't think it was out of sentimentality. I figured she just liked the house. This time, I designed a space that was comfortable for me. I handed the plans over to a reputable contractor. Sometimes, after work, I'd go over to the new place to check on the progress and help out where I could. After a few days of this, I was exhausted. I slipped on the stairs one evening and badly sprained my ankle. After that, I had to cut back on my visits. Mark told me to just rest and let him oversee the construction, but I was too excited to see the finished product. One evening, I couldn't help myself and drove to the new condo after work. As I pulled into the parking garage, I saw a familiar figure standing by my parking spot. It was Sarah, wearing a trench coat and a face mask. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. I hesitated for a moment before walking over. "What are you doing here?" I wasn't surprised she had found me. She was well-connected. Finding my new address wouldn't have been difficult. She just hadn't bothered to try before. "We need to talk," she said, her voice still raspy from her illness. "Let's go up. I heard you bought a new place. I'd like to see it." "No, we can talk here," I said, refusing. She didn't seem surprised. She didn't lose her composure, but a shadow of sadness crossed her face as she handed me a folder. "This is for you," she said. "It's compensation. I admit I took you for granted for 10 years. You gave so much to the company, to our life together, and I never properly repaid you. Take it. Consider it payment for the last decade. After this, I promise I will never bother you again." I paused, then took the folder from her. Inside was a detailed accounting of every bonus she had denied me, every project she had stolen, every unjust fine she had levied against me. The total was then doubled. It even included a section for emotional damages. At the back of the folder was a debit card. The pin was my birthday. I looked at her, trying to figure out if this was just another one of her games, or if she had truly accepted that we were over. I said I wouldn't bother you again, and I meant it, she said, as if reading my mind. "I've done a lot of thinking. It's time for me to move on." "Good," I replied. I nodded and took the folder and the card. I didn't refuse. In my mind, this was money I had earned, and I knew that accepting it was the only way to make her understand, once and for all, that we were finished. As I took it, I saw a flash of loss in her eyes, quickly replaced by what looked like relief. "So," she said, Can I see your new place now? Things haven't been great for me since we broke up. I just want to see that you're doing okay. It was just an excuse, I knew. A final, obsessive need to see. But I also knew her. If she set her mind to something, she would not give up until she got it. I didn't want any more drama. And since this would likely be the last time we ever saw each other, it seemed like a fitting way to close this chapter of our lives. All right, I said, and started walking toward my car. But she quickly stepped in front of me. Let me drive, she said, gesturing toward her car. Your ankle is still hurt. You shouldn't be driving. I didn't argue. I was surprised she even knew about my injury. In the past, that would have made me happy. But we couldn't go back. Appreciation that only comes after you've lost something is worthless. I said nothing and followed her to her car. I opened the passenger door but stopped. In the seat was a small stuffed animal, buckled in with a seatbelt. It had a small tag pinned to its chest that read Leo. Underneath, in smaller letters, it said, "To keep Sarah company when I'm not around," followed by a winking emoji. Sarah had clearly forgotten it was there. She flushed with embarrassment. "It's fine, I can sit in the back," I said, moving close the door. But Sarah stopped me. In one swift motion, she unbuckled the doll and tossed it into the back seat. I was surprised by her decisiveness. Leo loved these little passive-aggressive displays of affection. He would wear her hair ties on his wrist, leave trinkets with his name on them in her office, and scatter his belongings around our old apartment. He was always looking for ways to make me jealous, to push me out of the picture. At first, I didn't understand his game and would fight with Sarah about it. Once I got so angry, I threw one of his things out. Sarah had slapped me hard across the face for it. "Are you out of your mind, Daniel?" she had screamed. "He's young and a little immature, but his heart is in the right place. I only keep these things because I don't want to hurt his feelings. Why are you being so possessive? This jealousy is pathetic. It makes you look so small." I had been crushed, but I also began to understand that this was Leo's goal all along. He wanted to provoke me into pushing her away. "You don't have to do that," I told her now. "It doesn't matter. We're not together anymore. It wouldn't bother me if you were sitting right here." Sarah pressed her lips together. "I know you don't believe me. I know what you're thinking, but I want to be very clear. Even though we're broken up, I'm not going to be with Leo. I've told you before, I don't have feelings for him. He just reminds me of you when you were young and struggling, and I feel a need to help him." I had to scoff at that. I might have believed her if she hadn't forgotten one thing. While she was shielding Leo with her kindness, she was leaving me out in the rain, just as helpless as I'd ever been. "There's no point in talking about this," I said. "Let's just go." Sarah seemed to remember something. I was going to tell Leo. Crash! She was cut off by the loud clatter of something hitting the pavement behind us. Then, we heard Leo's voice, choked with disbelief. "Sarah, I thought you were sick. What are you doing here?" I turned to see Leo standing a few yards away, a look of shocked betrayal on his face. At his feet lay a dented thermos, its contents spilled across the concrete. He looked utterly devastated. Whether it was genuine or just another performance, I couldn't tell. I glanced at Sarah. She looked like a deer in headlights, pure panic on her face. But just as quickly, her calm composure returned. I had to laugh. Her claims of not having feelings for him were clearly just wishful thinking. "What are you doing here?" she asked him, her voice steady. Leo's voice was full of hurt. "You were so sick. I was worried about you, so I made you some soup. But when I got to your building, I saw you driving away. I was worried, so I followed you. But it looks like you don't need me after all." He crouched down and began to pick up the pieces of the broken thermos, the very picture of dejection. Sarah's expression was complicated. She opened her mouth to speak, but Leo cut her off. "It's okay, Sarah. I get it. I want you and Daniel to get back together. You should be with him. I was being foolish. You two go on ahead. I'll just clean this up and be on my way." As he spoke, he shot a pointed look at the stuffed animal now lying in the back seat of the car, then went back to cleaning up the mess, his head hung low. Seeing his magnanimous display, Sarah seemed torn. She took a half step toward him, then stopped. "Just go home, Leo. I'll have someone clean this up." "No, it's fine," he said. He shook his head. "Don't worry about me, Sarah. I'm not a child anymore. I took care of you for days when you were sick. I know how to handle a little mess." At the mention of him taking care of her, a fresh wave of guilt washed over Sarah's face. But she forced herself to look away. "Get in," she said, holding the car door open for me. I didn't move. "I could drive myself," I told her. "Go take care of him. We're broken up. You don't have to pretend for my sake." As I said it, I saw a flicker of triumph in Leo's eyes. He looked over, his expression a mask of pure innocence. "You broke up? Why?" Is Daniel still mad at me? Did I come a bad time? It has nothing to do with you, Sarah said curtly. It was an amicable split. She turned back to me. I said I would take you, and I'm going to keep my promise, no matter what. The words were barely out of her mouth when Leo let out a pained groan, clutched his chest, and collapsed onto the pavement. Leo, what's wrong? Sarah cried, her face instantly filled with panic. She rushed to his side, her eyes wide with fear. Leo lay on the ground, his face pale, saying nothing. Growing more frantic by the second, Sarah helped him to her car. She was about to put him in the back seat when she remembered me and shot me a hesitant look. I knew what she was thinking. His health is more important. Take him to the hospital, I said. Sarah bit her lip, then seemed to make a decision. Wait for me at your new place. I'll come find you as soon as I'm done at the hospital. With that, she helped Leo into the car and got behind the wheel. I watched her car speed away, feeling nothing. I didn't know if Sarah had seen through his act, but I was certain Leo was faking it. Not that it mattered to me. I was about to head to my condo when Mark called. Our latest project had just launched and had gone completely viral, attracting a massive following overnight. Now, international firms were reaching out, wanting to talk about partnerships. Mark needed me to fly out with him for an emergency business trip. I agreed immediately, turned my car around, and headed for the airport. It was all very last minute. The moment we landed in New York, we hit the ground running, polishing our pitch deck and getting a translated version ready for the meeting. We didn't have much experience with international clients, so we worked around the clock to prepare, making sure we could articulate every single one of our company's strengths. Mark and I were running on 4 hours of sleep a night. I was so tired I could have fallen asleep standing up. Thankfully, all the hard work paid off. After the meeting, our translator told us the clients were incredibly impressed with our preparation and the thoroughness of our proposal. They agreed to the partnership. Mark and I were so happy we practically hugged. We finally got a full night's sleep that night. I hadn't had a chance to check my phone for days. It was only then that I saw a flood of missed calls and texts from Sarah. The first ones were from the day I'd left, telling me she was waiting for me in my new condo. She was asking where I was. I was surprised she had actually gone. Usually, whenever there was a crisis involving Leo, she would become completely consumed by it and forget I even existed. I decided not to reply. It had been days. She had probably forgotten all about it. And since we were no longer together, there was no point in dredging it all up again. Mark and I took an extra day to do some sightseeing before flying back. By the time we landed in Austin, it was late at night. We said our goodbyes at the airport and headed home. I had just collapsed into bed when a loud, insistent banging started at my front door. It echoed in the quiet hallway, sounding furious. Thinking it might be a disgruntled competitor, I stormed over to the door and threw it open. The moment it was open, a figure stumbled into me, knocking me back several steps. The overwhelming stench of alcohol, mixed with a familiar perfume, filled the air. It was Sarah. I sighed, exasperated. What are you doing here, Sarah? I thought we agreed this was over. She hiccuped. It is over, she slurred. I'm with Leo now. Are you happy now? She asked, her eyes searching my face. She was probably looking for some sign of pain, jealousy, anything. But I gave her nothing. Her getting together with Leo was inevitable. I honestly didn't care what she did with her personal life. Then why are you here? I asked. Does your new boyfriend know you're here, drunk, in the middle of the night? I'll call him to come get you. Not wanting any more trouble, I pulled out my phone to call Leo. But Sarah snatched it from my hand and hurled it against the wall where it shattered. Don't you feel anything at all? She screamed. Do you know I waited for you all night? You stood me up. You flew to another city just to avoid me. She pointed a trembling finger at me, swaying on her feet. Daniel, you're a liar. I regret every second I spent with you. If I'd known you were this heartless, I would have left you years ago. Her voice was a hysterical shriek. I was worried she would disturb my neighbors, but I was afraid closing the door would only make her angrier. Luckily, just then, Leo came rushing down the hall. He shot me a venomous look, then gently took Sarah's arm. Sarah, honey, you're drunk. Let's get you home, okay? The sight of Leo seemed to sober her up slightly. She calmed down, gave me one last, long look, and then let him lead her away. After that night, I heard very little about Sarah. Leo would occasionally post a picture of them together, but it would usually be deleted within minutes. Eventually, his social media went completely dark. But I heard through the grapevine that Sarah's company was struggling. Her management had become erratic, and with Leo throwing his weight around, there had been a mass exodus of employees. By the time Sarah tried to stop the bleeding, it was too late. Some of my old team members The ones who have been instrumental to the company's early success reached out to me and Mark. We hired every single one of them. From them, I learned more about what was going on with Sarah. Apparently, she and Leo were fighting constantly, sometimes having screaming matches in the middle of the office. At first, Leo was always the one to back down and apologize. But soon, he was screaming right back at her. One fight got so bad that Leo ripped up a client proposal right before it was due, costing the company a significant amount of money. In a rage, Sarah finally fired him. But I think they're still living together, my old colleague told me. The fighting's gotten worse, though. I saw them at the emergency room once. I think he's hitting her. He shook his head, saying he was glad I had gotten out when I did. The Sarah of today was a world away from the woman I once knew, and her company was a shadow of its former self. I was just glad I had escaped that toxic cycle. I didn't say anything. I had seen this coming. Every step of her downfall was predictable. She was the architect of her own success, and now, of her own destruction. Once you start down the wrong path, it's almost impossible to turn back. And clearly, she had no intention of turning back. Meanwhile, Mark's company was thriving. We had successfully completed the international project and signed an even bigger follow-up contract. In 3 months, we had hit the revenue target he had set for the entire year. Mark and I spent the next few days discussing expansion. We were on the same page, but after considering all the factors, we decided to hold off. We debated new strategies for days without settling on a clear path forward. We even argued. But unlike Sarah, Mark wasn't stubborn. When Sarah and I disagreed on a work matter, she would insist we do it her way, right or wrong. If I didn't concede, the project would just stall. Mark, on the other hand, would listen to my perspective and then present his counterarguments. Our disagreements always led to a stronger, more refined plan. After one particularly intense debate, I went home exhausted. My new condo was finally finished and ready to live in. I soaked in the tub, feeling the tension melt away. I was thinking about our next steps at work when my phone rang. I dried my hands and picked it up. I raised an eyebrow when I saw the caller ID. It was Sarah. It had been nearly 6 months since I'd last seen her. We hadn't spoken since the night Leo had dragged her away from my apartment. We'd run into each other at a few industry events, but we'd only exchanged brief, polite nods. Every time, though, I could feel Leo's eyes on me, burning with a familiar, petty resentment. I could understand the resentment of a new partner toward an ex. What I couldn't understand was why, after all this time with Sarah by his side, he was still holding a grudge. Unsure of what she could possibly want, I answered the call anyway. "Daniel, a pipe burst in my house. Can you come over and help me fix it?" she asked the moment I answered. Her voice was still hoarse, as if she'd been crying. I thought for a moment before replying coolly, "You should call Leo, or a plumber." I found her request strange. I couldn't understand why she was calling me. In the past, if anything broke at the house, I would drop everything and rush home to fix it. But we were broken up now. It was completely inappropriate for her to ask this of me. After a few seconds of silence, Sarah spoke again. "I broke up with Leo a couple of days ago. I fired him from the company, too. We're not in contact anymore." I was taken aback. Before I could ask, her voice choked with a sob. "I already tried calling a plumber, but it's too late at night. Daniel, I know you don't want to see me, but I'm out of options. I don't know who else to call. I really don't know what to do. If you don't help me, I think I might." Her voice trailed off into a sob. She sounded utterly desperate. I could hear the sound of a strong wind whipping through the phone's microphone. A sharp sense of unease washed over me. "Where are you right now?" I demanded. After a long pause, she answered the roof. My mind flashed back to the early days of the company. After a bad business decision led to a massive loss, Sarah had a complete breakdown. I'd found her on a window ledge in the middle of the night, a suicide note on her desk. Luckily, I had found her just in time. I thought she was past that she would never do something so reckless again. If I didn't know she was in danger, I would have stayed away, but now that I did, I couldn't just ignore it. I sighed. "Don't move. I'm on my way." I threw on some clothes and drove back to her old house. When she opened the door, I could see she had been crying, her eyes red and swollen. A pipe under the sink had burst, and the kitchen floor was flooded. I took off my shoes, waded in, and saw that it was just a loose fitting. A few turns with a wrench, and it was fixed. The waterproofing in this building is pretty good, so you don't have to worry about the downstairs neighbors, I told her. "Just mop up the water, and you'll be fine." I turned to leave, but before I could take 2 steps, her arms wrapped tightly around my waist from behind. She was sobbing against my back. Daniel, you do still care about me, don't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come. I'm so sorry. Everything was my fault. I know that now. Can we please go back to the way we were? I froze for a second, then pried her arms off me. You're mistaken, I said, turning to face her. I'm not a volunteer. My fee for the house call is $100. Do you prefer Venmo or Zelle? Sarah stared at me, her lips trembling. After a long moment, she pulled out her phone and sent me the money. It was $10,000. You overpaid, I said. I immediately sent the difference back to her, then showed her my phone screen. See? Now we're square. Square, she repeated numbly. A bitter smile touched her lips. I didn't say another word. I left her apartment, and on my way out of the complex, I saw a stray cat. I took the $100 bill, went to a nearby convenience store, bought some cat food, and left it for the animal. Then I drove home. I soon realized that Sarah had moved on in her own way. A month after a new project launched, I was served with a lawsuit from her company. The suit alleged that I had stolen trade secrets. The evidence they presented was comprehensive. In addition to forged documents and falsified bank records, there was a video. It was from the night I had gone to her house to fix the pipe. The footage had been heavily edited, showing only a clip of me searching through a drawer for a wrench. Sarah's claim was that I had been searching for confidential files. Someone leaked the video online and it went viral. Our project was already getting a lot of buzz, and our competitors were more than happy to fan the flames of the scandal. Most people didn't know the full story, but once the internet sleuths discovered I had left Sarah's company to join Mark's, and they saw a chart comparing our company's explosive growth to her company's decline over the past year, they were convinced. The narrative was set. I was a corporate spy who had stolen her secrets. The online abuse was relentless. People started calling for a boycott of our products. I was brought in for questioning. When I saw Sarah at the station, the plaintiff, she couldn't meet my gaze. In that moment, I understood everything. You and Leo never broke up, did you? I said. He was the one who stole from the company, the one who nearly bankrupted it, luring me to your house that night. That was all part of your plan to frame me. I laid out my theory calmly. I had noticed several strange things at her house that night. The men's slippers by the door, the cigarette butts in the bathroom trash, the blue velvet curtains she had always despised hanging in the living room. At the time, I dismissed them, thinking maybe her tastes had changed since she'd been with Leo. But now I realized some things never change. Sarah pressed her lips together. I didn't want to do this. Leo is still so young. He has his whole life ahead of him. I couldn't let one mistake ruin everything for him. And what about me? I scoffed. After 10 years together, after everything I did for you, you can just destroy my life without a second thought. Sarah, have you really forgotten how I pulled you out of the gutter? Her body went rigid, and she flinched almost imperceptibly. I knew she remembered. She came from a poor, rural family that valued sons over daughters. Her parents were abusive, beating her for the smallest mistake. After she fought her way into a good university, they tried to drag her back home for an arranged marriage. I was the one who gave them my life savings to buy her freedom. The day she was finally free, she had clung to me, crying, saying it would be us against the world. I never would have blamed her for falling in love with someone else, for choosing to leave me. But I could not accept this, that after everything I had done for her, she would sacrifice me to save someone else from their own mistakes. I looked at her, a final, desperate flicker of hope in my chest. After a long silence, 2 cold words escaped her lips. I'm sorry. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. As I watched her walk away, the last embers of affection I held for her died out completely. She had no idea that she was the one about to be dragged into the abyss, not me. A week later, we were in court. Because our company had become so well known and the case had generated so much public interest, the trial was live-streamed. Sarah's lawyer presented his evidence, his questioning aggressive and full of traps. Sarah sat beside him, silent, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. Leo was in the gallery, and the smug, defiant look was back on his face. He was sure he had already won. But when Mark, acting as my counsel, began to present our evidence, their confident expressions vanished. The final piece of evidence was an audio recording. On it, a conversation between Sarah and Leo was perfectly clear. The entire courtroom heard their scheme. How Leo had sold company secrets for cash, costing them a major contract and saddling them with a massive penalty fee. On the recording, Leo was sobbing hysterically. Sarah, I'm so young, he cried. And you're pregnant with my child. Do you want our baby to be born without a father? I know I messed up. You can hit me, you can scream at me, you can kill me if you want, just please don't leave me. The sound of sharp slap followed. I suspected it was Leo grabbing Sarah's hand and hitting himself with it. He was an expert at playing the victim. Sitting in the gallery, the color drained from Leo's face, leaving it a sickly gray. He leaped to his feet. That's impossible, he shouted. That recording is a fake. They doctored it. He lunged forward as if to snatch the evidence, but the bailiffs quickly restrained him. Then, Sarah's voice, cold and resolute, filled the courtroom from the recording. All right, I'll help you, but this is the last time. A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. In a live stream chat, the comments were flying, a torrent of outrage. I looked at Sarah. She seemed to have expected this. Her face was ashen, but she remained perfectly still. The judge asked Sarah to confirm the authenticity of the recording and if she had any evidence to refute it. All eyes in the courtroom were on her. Leo, his face red with fury, hissed at her to deny it, to tell them it was a fake. But Sarah simply stood up and walked slowly toward Leo. The bailiffs, seeing her calm demeanor, didn't intervene. Leo, thinking she was coming to strategize with him, visibly relaxed, a hopeful look on his face. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Sarah, you have to fix this. Tell them it's fake. Be smart about this, just like you always are. You and Daniel are over. Don't feel bad about. He never finished the sentence. Sarah's hand shot out and she slapped him hard across the face. The recording is authentic, she declared, her voice ringing through the silent courtroom. I admit it. I conspired with Leo Hayes to maliciously frame Daniel Miller. Everyone heard her, loud and clear. The live stream chat exploded. Leo completely snapped. With a wild cry, he lunged for Sarah's throat, but the bailiffs tackled him, pinning him face down on the floor. Sarah walked over to me. She apologized, then asked how I knew, how I'd been so prepared. My face remained impassive as I explained everything. Shortly after I left her company, Mark had, by a strange twist of fate, uncovered their plot. He had warned me to be careful. When she called me that night about the pipe, I knew it was a trap. But I went anyway. It wasn't just that I was worried she might actually hurt herself. It was also part of a plan Mark and I had devised. After our project's massive success, we needed to scale quickly. We had been discussing the possibility of acquiring Sarah's company, but the timing was never right. Her lawsuit provided the perfect opportunity. I had been hesitant to go through with it, but her cold-blooded betrayal solidified my resolve. I explained it all to her piece by piece. When I was finished, she smiled, a look of strange relief on her face. So that's what this was all about, she said. Her smile sent a shiver down my spine. I knew something was wrong. A glint of metal caught my eye. I saw the razor blade hidden in her hand. Before I could even react, she spun around. In one fluid motion, she slashed it across Leo's throat. He collapsed in a pool of his own blood, his eyes wide with shock. The bailiffs were caught completely off guard. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. With a practiced, deliberate motion, Sarah then drew the blade across her own wrists. As she fell, she looked at me and smiled. Her lips formed the words, "One last time, Daniel. Let me help you." The courtroom erupted into chaos. Someone was screaming for an ambulance. They were both rushed to the hospital. Leo was pronounced dead on arrival. Sarah survived the blood loss, but she lost the baby. She was arrested for murder and, in the end, sentenced to death. After the truth came out, public opinion swung violently in my favor. Mark and I had been poised to acquire Sarah's company in the ensuing fallout. But in the end, we decided against it. He agreed with me that it felt wrong, unethical. We decided to continue building our company our own way, one step at a time. Strangely, though, Sarah's lawyer contacted me. He informed me that she had written a will, leaving her entire estate, including her controlling shares in the company, to me. Upon her death, it would all be mine. After some thought, I took over the company, changed its name, and completely restructured its mission. It became a service for other businesses, a third-party firm dedicated to verifying the claims made on those informal industry blacklists. We kept our fees low so that even the smallest startups could afford to give a potential hire a fair chance. It was my way of helping the people who, like me, had been unfairly targeted. I stood in the CEO's office of that once great company, looking out over the city below. From that day forward, my life was my own, and business was booming. Sarah's perspective, Every day after I broke up with Daniel was a day filled with anxiety and regret. I admit I had a soft spot for Leo. I felt sorry for him, but Daniel was the one I truly loved. In my mind, the two feelings were never mutually exclusive. When Leo asked when I was going to leave Daniel, I told him to be patient. I knew Leo would wait, and I was sure Daniel would never leave me. We had been together for 10 years. I was confident he wouldn't throw that away. That's why, when he agreed to break up, I didn't take it seriously. At first, I thought he was just being dramatic, but then he grew colder, more distant, until one day I looked into his eyes and the love that had always been there was gone. That's when I started to panic. I tried to win him back, but he shut me out every time. Leo tried to help, telling me he knew how a man's mind worked. I took his advice. I flaunted our new relationship, sent Daniel the fake pregnancy test, but nothing worked. He just drifted further away. When he stood me up and then fled the city to get away from me, I finally broke. I couldn't understand why I was debasing myself like this. In a moment of anger and despair, I told Leo the first would be with him. When I heard Daniel was back in town, I got very drunk. I don't remember much, but I think I went to his apartment and then Leo took me home. A month later, I found out I was pregnant. At the same time, the company was falling apart. I worked day and night trying to figure out what was wrong, and I discovered the truth. Leo had betrayed me. My world fell apart. Leo cried and begged for my forgiveness, and my heart softened. I decided to help him. I told myself that Daniel was successful now. This lawsuit would be a setback, but he would recover. Leo was still so young. I wanted to give him a second chance. But then came the night Daniel fixed my pipe. As he left, he even took out my trash. I watched from my balcony as he stopped and crouched down to feed a stray cat. A few minutes after he drove away, Leo returned. He walked over to the cat and paused. Then, without warning, he kicked the small animal as hard as he could, sending it flying. In that instant, it was like I was struck by lightning. I suddenly saw with perfect clarity that I had become rotten to the core. But I realized there was still one last chance to make things right. I had never truly helped Daniel, not once in our entire time together. This one last time, I would help him. It would be my penance.